I never thought that they would come where I would have to say this. I would have to admit I was wrong. Okay, I was wrong. I was wrong. Let's talk about it. So I posted a video with my early thoughts about Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis just last week, and I'm not gonna lie, a lot of you guys disagreed with me, and I was like, you know what? That's fine. It was a thing about opinions, and different people have different opinions, and that's okay. But I did take into account a lot of the things that you guys were telling me in the comments, as well as keeping them in the back of my mind when I was actually playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis. So just to reiterate real quick, my take that I had on my last video was that I had a really big problem with the 100-point cards being legal in the format and their existence forcing Konami to effectively apply point values onto cards that probably shouldn't have a point value associated to them. My main examples were S0 making every single rank up spell cost at least 1 point, or something like Mystic Mine existing forcing Planet Pathfinder to cost 2 points. And I had a really big issue with that because in my head, those couple of little points that are forced onto some cards that shouldn't have any point cost associated to them would add up and basically force you to play a deck that's loaded with a lot of point cost cards that you don't necessarily feel like should cost points, ultimately forcing you to play a significantly weaker deck when another card is the culprit for why your deck is significantly weaker. Now, while that was my initial opinion about the format, I did keep that in the back of my mind when actually playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis. And I've been playing it a lot. I'm going to be so real. I've been grinding games over on Dueling Book. I'm like 20-0 with my Archmage deck that I really, really like. I'm really happy that I ended up finding a deck that I really enjoyed. And that's kind of what, you know, flipped the switch in my head. Initially, I had built a deck and I was like, I really, really love this deck. And then just a couple of days later, my deck got nerfed. Basically, it got hit on this, you know, points change list. And that resulted in me being really upset and really feeling like nothing that my deck did should have caused my deck to get hit in some way, but now it is hit and that makes it less good. And my initial thought was, I don't like the way that they're handling this because I shouldn't feel the way that I feel. I shouldn't be getting my deck hit because of some other card. Now, while my opinion on it still a little bit kind of stands, I think that the reaction that I had to it was a little bit excessive because I was looking at it the wrong way. And I think that after reading your comments and playing a lot more Genesis, both on Dueling Book and on my streams, if you guys have been watching the studio streams at all, I actually think that this format is fantastic, and I think that the outlook that I have on it is quite different. And I want to tell you guys the way that I now look at how they're going to be doing the point system and why I think it's actually really good, and why a lot of you guys might also agree that the format is going in a really solid direction. As a Yu-Gi-Oh! Player, I've been very conditioned to the whole, you know, ban list system in my head and all this stuff. So anytime I'm playing a deck and a card of mine gets hit, my deck directly gets significantly worse, even if it was a card that got hit because of another deck. I'll admit to it, I'm a rogue player. I'm always playing these rogue decks, so I'm not really used to my decks taking hits because I'm usually playing these off-meta decks that aren't on anybody's radar to get hit on the ban list or anything like that. So anytime a card of mine does get hit, it's usually because some big meta strategy is abusing it, and then my deck kind of gets caught in the crossfire. Now, I really felt this way when it came to Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis because they did hit some cards that I was playing in my deck that I didn't feel like needed to get hit. However, I think that now, instead of looking at it from the ban list perspective, oh, they hit my deck and things like that, I think we're going to be looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis a lot more in a similar lens than you would when you're looking at something like a fighting game or a MOBA or an RPG or something like that. I think that the way that they're going to be adjusting the points list is actually going to be more akin to patch notes, like a weekly patch or a monthly patch that they put into games like TFT or something like that, or fighting games. We know in Tekken 8, they're constantly changing up what these characters are able to do, changing frame data constantly and stuff like that. I now view the point system in that way. And the reason why I view it in that way is because I think that at no point are they going to be outright killing decks, but they're going to be slightly nerfing this, slightly buffing that, and basically making small minor adjustments that are going to help the format feel extremely fresh and new and up to date. Anytime something bullshit is going on, you know, or at least, you know, you hope, but you pretty much know that you're only going to have to be dealing with this bullshit for like a month until the next point update comes out, rather than waiting 4, 5, 6 months for a ban list like we do in the TCG. And I think that is a really, really positive factor of Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis. So in my opinion, I think that the way that they're going to be utilizing this point system is actually a lot better than I initially anticipated. I thought that this point system was just going to be used in order to lock out card A and card B from being used together, while making it so card B, you know, despite having a small points cost, was just no longer viable to play in all sorts of decks. I had pretty big complaints about stuff like Droll and Lockbird costing less than Ash Blossom, which I still do, let's be real. I think that Ash Blossom is a more fair card than Droll and Lockbird and stuff like that, but I think that it's the kind of format that lends itself well to allowing players to complain, positively complain. Okay, we gotta stop shitting on Konami every time they do anything. Okay, we gotta give them a little bit of grace and say, hey, Konami, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate communication, but there's this one little thing that I dislike. I think that we as a community are now able to do that, able to voice to them, we dislike this one thing, this other combination of cards is like kind of bullshit, and we can reasonably expect that they will answer that and that they will correct the point cost on some of these cards in order to balance the format out, which honestly is something that we've never really been able to experience in Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole. So yeah, I was looking back on the video that I'd posted, and while I initially had this like gut feeling of, no, these really broken cards are just going to take over the format and small point costs for other cards that we won't be able to play in interesting and fun decks and stuff like that, I no longer look at it that way. I think I now view the point system as like, okay, every time they make a change, you just got to go back into the lab, back into the tank. I think the biggest appeal of Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis, and this completely went over my head and that's entirely on me, the biggest appeal, in my opinion, is in the deck building aspect as a whole. And I think that because a lot of people really like the deck building aspect and you don't want a format to just get straight up solved, the fact that they are constantly going to be updating this point system forces you to go back into the lab and is like, okay, we have a new points list change. Is there a new best deck? Is there a strategy that gets to creep up that wasn't as good before but now is able to compete and stuff? I think that that's where the interest of Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis is, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't see that at first, and that's why I posted the video that I posted earlier this week. That really wasn't where my mind went to, and I'm making this video not only to clarify that I do see it that way now, but it's also for the people that maybe haven't seen it that way to now understand that yes, Genesis, the idea of it is in the deck building more so than in the playing itself. Obviously, playing is a large part of Yu-Gi-Oh!, but deck building has always been a very large part of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's something that I'm not even gonna lie, I'm not very good at. I'm not great at deck building. So I think that looking back on it, the constant patch note updates, the constant point, changes and stuff like that is not to the detriment of players because, oh, you built this deck and now it's no longer playable and stuff like that. It's more so, you built this deck, you figured it out, you kind of solved the format, you found the deck that was the best or one of the best to be played in the format, and now that you found that, you had a chance to play with it, here's a new pointless update, do it again. And I think that really what the format is tailored towards is it's tailored towards those players that love deck building. And honestly, not even just that, I think that this format helps players that are not good at deck building become better deck builders, and that will translate over to Master Duel, translate over to the TCG to help players become better deck builders on Master Duel and on TCG and not have to net deck so often. So I'm not even gonna lie, I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis also will help players, and it'll help us in general as a community see kind of a genesis, a new beginning of new ways to deck build that maybe we hadn't considered in the TCG or in Master Duel after thinking about it quite a lot. And I know I'm just yapping, this is kind of like a yappy video. I actually really like the way that Genesis functions, and I really like the point system. After playing games and seeing some interesting decks, dude, I never even read a Super Quant card prior to this format, I'm not even gonna lie. And the Super Quant deck is super cool. My buddy Griffin pulled up to my studio stream and he was playing Chaos Ruler and a Thunder Dragon deck, and I was like, wait, this is sick. You can play Chaos Ruler, but you can't play Colossus. And never has my opponent summoned a Chaos Ruler, and I was like, this is fair and balanced. Where actually this time, my opponent summoned Chaos Ruler, and I was like, this is fair and balanced. So I think that I really like the ideas of deck building that you can create with this format, and also how far you can push decks while also not having them feel completely busted. So in that regard, I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis is actually doing a fantastic job. So a couple of points that I think we as a community should focus on, and where we should, kind of focus our interest when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis. One, I think that we should continue to require that Konami communicate with us the way that they have been. The fact that they've been posting regular blog posts and stuff like that is a huge plus, and I think we as a community should encourage this rather than criticize everything that they do. And I'm number one guilty of this, and I will stop doing this. I think that I'm going to stop being immediately critical of everything Konami does and instead look at things from a more positive perspective, because Konami is actually making something for us, for the community, something we've been asking for a long time. And I think that it's important that we encourage them to keep going in the right direction rather than shitting on them for it. 2, I think that we should keep an open mind whenever they do make pointless changes. Instead of immediately going, fuck, they killed my deck, I think instead we should look at the point changes as like, okay, where can I pivot? What is new that I can do? And explore that before getting upset about the point changes. And again, I'm guilty of this as well. That was my initial visceral reaction that I had, and I'm committing to not doing that anymore. I think legitimately whenever there's going to be a point change, I'm going to look at it with an open mind and go, okay, what cool new thing can I do, rather than get upset about what cool thing I could do that I can't do anymore, because it's like you say, when one door closes, another opens up. And I think it's important to explore all those avenues before we get really upset. And last but not least, and this one is really, really important, I think that everyone in the community should commit to supporting their local card shop when it comes to Genesys format. I know a lot of local card shops are a little bit apprehensive of running Genesys format because they're worried that it's gonna go like Time Wizard, or it's gonna go like, you know, any of these other alternate formats that Konami was supporting, where initially it went really well, but then fell off slowly but surely. And then, you know, a lot of stores stopped running Time Wizard locals and stuff like that. I think that if you care about the Genesys format and you want to see the Genesys format thrive and you want Konami to continue supporting it, I think that we as a community really truly should support our local card shops, make the time to go out to our locals and play Genesys locals and stuff like that, rather than exclusively play at home on Dueling Book. Because if we don't support this format, Konami also won't support this format. And frankly, I really, really like this format. I think this format has the potential to be something very special. So I know that I'm going to be going to Genesys locals. I might be streaming Genesys locals if you guys are interested in watching that. Twitch.tv/DistantCoder. I've been doing Genesys streams in my studio, and I'm going to be starting to stream Genesys locals and even regular locals. I plan on traveling and doing a lot of like paper play content. That's something that a lot of you guys should also be wanting to do, is be playing paper TCG. I think that this truly is what we as a community need to be doing. We need to support these formats in order for these formats to be allowed to thrive. So with that being said, that was my short yap session of the day. I know what was the point of this, Coder? I don't know. I have things on my mind that I want to talk about, and I decided to talk about them. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think I'm a flip-flop for changing my opinion on how I felt about the format? Or do you guys feel like the format is in a good place and is going in a good direction, and you want to continue supporting it? I would love to hear what you guys have to say about Genesys format, and I want to see you guys in the Genesys Discord. I linked it in the description of my other video. I'm going to be linking in the description of this one too. Join the Genesys format Discord, because I would love to yap about this format that I really enjoy with you guys there. It's been a wild time. It's been a very long time since I've looked at a format of Yu-Gi-Oh! And been like, I really fucking love this. And now it feels like a whole new world, because I really love Genesys and I really love the current TCG format, which is like unheard of. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, like physical Yu-Gi-Oh! Is at an all-time high, and I'm really, really excited to see where they go with all of this. I'm really excited to continue playing paper Yu-Gi-Oh! So if you guys are excited just as much as I am, let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I appreciate you all, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good one, guys. Peace!